Before you continue watching, pay close attention, because something has quietly shifted in your soulmate's world that they never expected to experience. This was not a dramatic event that everyone could see. It happened in a much quieter way, deep within their thoughts, where certain answers finally began replacing questions they had carried for far too long. For months, perhaps even longer, they believed the future of this connection was impossible to understand. Every time they tried imagining what could happen next, uncertainty always seemed to stand in the way. One day they felt hopeful, the next they felt discouraged. They convinced themselves that too many unanswered questions existed, too many circumstances remained unresolved, and too many possibilities were beyond their control. But recently, something inside them changed. Without warning, they experienced a moment of unexpected clarity that made them stop and look at everything from an entirely different perspective. It wasn't caused by someone else's advice or by outside influence. It came from a quiet realization that their own heart had been trying to reveal all along. What once felt uncertain suddenly began feeling strangely familiar, as though pieces of a puzzle they had been carrying for so long were finally starting to fall into place, because your heart needs this message right now. Understand that your soulmate is no longer looking at this connection through the same eyes they once did. They have started reflecting on moments they previously overlooked, conversations they once dismissed, and emotions they never allowed themselves to fully explore. As those memories return, they are beginning to notice something remarkable. Every challenge, every delay, and every unanswered question no longer feels random. Instead, they seem connected by an invisible thread leading toward a much greater understanding. The future that once appeared hidden behind confusion is slowly becoming easier for them to imagine. They are beginning to realize that uncertainty was never the entire story. There was always another perspective waiting to be discovered, one that could only appear after enough personal growth had taken place. This realization has filled them with both surprise and quiet hope because, for the first time in a very long while, they are no longer asking whether a future is possible. They are beginning to wonder why they ever believed it wasn't, and listen carefully, because this is where everything begins to change. Your soulmate has recently found themselves thinking less about what went wrong and more about what still remains possible. They are no longer allowing temporary circumstances to define the entire journey. Instead, they are beginning to recognize that some futures are not built through perfect timing, but through gradual understanding. Every reflection is bringing another layer of clarity. Every honest thought is removing another layer of fear. The picture that once seemed impossible to see is becoming clearer with every passing day. And as this unexpected clarity continues growing stronger within them, they are preparing to uncover a truth about your shared future that they never imagined their own heart would one day be ready to accept. And listen to this, because something beautiful is beginning to unfold inside your soulmate. Something they never expected to experience after everything that has happened between the two of you. For a long time, whenever they thought about this connection, their attention was immediately drawn toward the distance, the unanswered questions, the misunderstandings, and the uncertainty that seemed to surround every possibility of a future together. Their mind became so focused on what appeared to be standing in the way that they slowly stopped asking themselves a much more important question. What if those obstacles were never meant to define the future at all? Recently, without even realizing it, they have started looking at this journey through an entirely different perspective. Instead of seeing only the problems, they have begun noticing the progress. Instead of remembering only the moments of separation, they are beginning to recognize how much both of you have changed since this journey first began. This shift has not happened overnight. It arrived quietly through reflection, personal growth, and countless moments where life gently encouraged them to see beyond temporary circumstances. For the first time in a very long while, they are beginning to understand that the future cannot be judged solely by what happened in the past, because your heart needs this message right now. Understand that your soulmate has recently started imagining possibilities they once refused to consider. There was a time when thinking about the future felt overwhelming because every thought was immediately followed by doubt. They questioned whether too much had happened. They wondered whether too much time had passed. They believed certain opportunities had disappeared forever. Yet something within them has gradually begun replacing those fears with quiet curiosity. They are no longer asking themselves why everything became so complicated. Instead, they have started wondering what could still be possible now that both of you have grown into different versions of yourselves. That single change in perspective has become incredibly powerful because hope naturally begins growing wherever fear stops controlling the conversation. They are discovering that the future they once believed had disappeared may simply have been waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. Recently, your soulmate has found themselves reflecting on the lessons hidden inside every challenge this connection experienced. Looking back, they no longer see only disappointment. They see growth. They recognize how every period of silence taught patience. Every misunderstanding encouraged deeper self-awareness. Every emotional struggle forced them to understand themselves in ways they never would have otherwise. At the time, these experiences felt painful and confusing. They wondered why nothing seemed to unfold as easily as they had hoped. But now, standing on the other side of those experiences, they are beginning to recognize that growth often arrives disguised as difficulty. If everything had unfolded exactly the way they wanted in the beginning, they might never have become the person they are today. That realization has softened something inside them. Instead of feeling frustrated by the delays, they are beginning to appreciate the wisdom those delays quietly created and listen carefully. Because another realization has recently begun transforming the way your soulmate sees this connection. They are noticing that many of the obstacles they once believed were permanent now appear surprisingly temporary. Circumstances change, people mature, emotional wounds heal, perspectives evolve. The things that once seemed impossible no longer carry the same weight they once did. Looking back, they realize they often assumed that because something felt difficult in one season of life, it would remain difficult forever. Now they understand that life rarely stays the same for long. The future is constantly being shaped by the choices people make, the healing they experience, and the wisdom they gain along the way. This understanding has filled them with a quiet sense of optimism they have not allowed themselves to feel for a very long time. They are beginning to recognize that the future remains unwritten, and that realization has opened a door they once believed had been permanently closed. Because your heart needs this right now. Know that your soulmate is also beginning to understand something deeply personal. Throughout this journey, they spent so much time trying to predict what would happen next that they overlooked what was happening inside themselves. While they worried about outcomes, their heart was quietly changing. While they searched for certainty, they were developing emotional maturity. While they focused on external circumstances, they were becoming more honest about what truly mattered to them. This personal transformation has become one of the greatest surprises of all. They are beginning to realize that before they could clearly see a shared future, they first needed to become someone capable of recognizing its value. That growth has not only changed the way they see themselves, it has completely changed the way they see this connection. There have also been moments recently when your soulmate caught themselves imagining simple possibilities that once felt impossible. Not dramatic fantasies or unrealistic expectations, but peaceful moments that suddenly felt natural instead of distant. They found themselves wondering what it would feel like to speak openly without fear, to laugh together without carrying old emotional weight, and to experience this connection without allowing past uncertainty to define every future possibility. These thoughts have surprised them because they appeared naturally rather than being forced. Their heart seems to be moving toward hope before their mind has fully caught up. That quiet shift has become impossible for them to ignore. It has shown them that somewhere beneath every unanswered question, A part of them has never completely stopped believing that something meaningful could still exist between the two of you. And listen to this, because this is where everything begins moving toward an even greater understanding. Your soulmate is no longer looking at the future as something that should be feared or controlled. Instead, they are beginning to see it as something that unfolds when two people have learned the lessons they were always meant to learn. They understand now that timing is not simply about waiting, it is about becoming. Every experience, every challenge, every emotional lesson has quietly prepared them for the clarity they are experiencing today. The future no longer feels like a distant dream clouded by uncertainty. It's beginning to feel like a possibility that grows stronger each time they choose understanding over fear, hope over doubt, and truth over old assumptions. And as this quiet confidence continues expanding within their heart, they are preparing to uncover an even deeper realization, one that will help them understand that many of the events they once believed were setbacks may have actually been guiding both of you toward the future you were always meant to share. And listen carefully, because your soulmate is beginning to recognize something that once seemed impossible for them to understand. For a very long time, they believed the journey between the two of you was made up of separate events that never truly connected. They saw the delays as isolated disappointments. They viewed the misunderstandings as unfortunate moments that simply happened. They treated the emotional distance as proof that life was moving both of you in different directions. Looking back, everything appeared scattered, almost as though there was no deeper purpose behind any of it. But recently, a completely different picture has started forming in their mind. They have begun revisiting certain memories, not with frustration, but with curiosity. As they reflect more honestly, they are noticing that every experience seems connected to the next in ways they never realized before. Situations that once felt random are beginning to reveal a hidden pattern. Lessons that once felt painful are now beginning to make sense. They are discovering that what looked like disconnected chapters may have always belonged to one much larger story. That realization has brought them a quiet sense of peace because, for the first time, they are beginning to believe that nothing between the two of you happened without teaching something important. Because your heart needs this message right now. Understand that your soulmate is no longer measuring this connection by individual moments of disappointment. Instead, they are beginning to look at the entire journey as one complete experience. They are asking themselves questions they never considered before. What if every delay created the opportunity for personal growth? What if every misunderstanding revealed something both of you needed to heal within yourselves? What if the distance was never meant to destroy the connection, but to strengthen the people connected by it? These questions have slowly changed the way they remember everything that happened. They are beginning to realize that life often prepares people for their future in ways that only become visible after enough time has passed. While they once focused only on what seemed to be missing, they can now see everything that was quietly being built beneath the surface. That understanding has replaced much of the frustration they carried with a deep sense of gratitude they never expected to feel. Recently, your soulmate has started recognizing how much both of you have changed since this connection first entered your lives. At the beginning of the journey, emotions often spoke louder than wisdom. Expectations sometimes overshadowed understanding. Fear occasionally became stronger than trust. Looking back now, they realize that neither of you were the same people you are today. Life has shaped both of you through experiences that could never have been learned any other way. Challenges created resilience. Disappointments encouraged emotional maturity. Moments of solitude revealed strengths that remained hidden while everything felt comfortable. They are beginning to understand that growth was quietly taking place even during seasons when it appeared that nothing was happening at all. This realization has completely changed the way they see the passing of time. What once felt like lost time now feels like preparation. What once felt like separation now appears to have been a season of becoming. And listen to this, because another powerful truth has recently entered your soulmate's awareness. They have begun noticing that some of the biggest turning points in their life only made sense after they had already passed through them. There were moments they resisted because they seemed unfair. There were opportunities they believed they had lost forever. There were situations they questioned repeatedly because they could not understand why life unfolded the way it did. Yet now, as they look back with greater wisdom, they can clearly see that each experience quietly directed them toward becoming a more emotionally balanced, compassionate, and self-aware person. This realization has encouraged them to wonder whether the same truth applies to this connection as well. Perhaps what once appeared to be obstacles were actually preparing both hearts for something neither of you could have fully appreciated before. That possibility has become impossible for them to dismiss because every honest reflection seems to support it. Because your heart needs this right now. Know that your soulmate is beginning to understand that timing is far more meaningful than they once believed. There was a season when they expected life to unfold according to their own plans. If something did not happen quickly, they assumed it was never meant to happen at all. But experience has gently reshaped that belief. They now understand that some of life's greatest blessings require emotional readiness rather than perfect circumstances. A future built before two people are prepared often struggles beneath the weight of unhealed fears and unanswered questions. A future built after growth has taken place stands upon much stronger foundations. As this realization settles into their heart, they are beginning to appreciate that the journey itself may have been just as valuable as the destination they once focused on. Every lesson has quietly prepared them to value this connection in ways they could not have understood before. There have also been moments recently when your soulmate found themselves unexpectedly imagining how different the future could feel now compared to the past. Not because circumstances have magically changed overnight, but because they have changed. Their reactions are different. Their priorities are different. The qualities they now seek in a lasting relationship are no longer based on excitement alone, but on emotional stability, honesty, mutual respect, and genuine understanding. As they compare these new values with everything they shared with you, they are beginning to notice something remarkable. The future they once feared now seems far more achievable than it ever did before because they are approaching it with greater wisdom instead of greater expectation. This thought has quietly filled them with confidence they never imagined they would possess. And listen carefully, because this is where the hidden pieces finally begin connecting. Your soulmate is no longer seeing the past as a collection of mistakes or missed opportunities. They are beginning to see it as a series of lessons that gradually prepared both of you for something stronger than either of you could have created before. Every emotional challenge revealed a weakness that needed healing. Every delay encouraged patience that would one day become invaluable. Every unanswered question inspired deeper self-discovery. What once felt like life pulling you apart is beginning to look like life, preparing both of you separately before bringing greater understanding into the connection. This new perspective has replaced fear with quiet certainty. They are beginning to trust that meaningful futures are not created by avoiding difficulties, but by allowing those difficulties to transform the people involved. And as this understanding continues growing stronger inside them, it is awakening a confidence unlike anything they have felt before, a confidence that is preparing them to stop looking at the future through the eyes of uncertainty and begin seeing it through the eyes of genuine hope. Because deep within their heart, they are starting to believe that what is meant to endure is never defeated by time, but strengthened by everything it overcomes. And listen to this, because your soulmate has now reached a place they never imagined they would arrive. For so long, every time they allowed themselves to think about the future of this connection, fear quietly stepped in before hope ever had the chance to speak. Fear reminded them of everything that went wrong, Fear replayed old disappointments until they felt larger than they really were. Fear convinced them that protecting their heart was wiser than listening to it. Because of that, they spent far more time preparing themselves for loss than allowing themselves to believe in possibility. Yet something remarkable has recently begun changing within them. Without even realizing it at first, they have started responding differently to the thoughts that once filled them with uncertainty. The future no longer feels like something they should avoid thinking about. Instead, it has become something they quietly return to with curiosity rather than hesitation. They are beginning to understand that fear only has power when someone believes it tells the entire story. The moment they started questioning those old fears, they discovered that another voice had been patiently waiting beneath them all along. It was the quiet voice of their own heart, and it had never truly stopped believing that this connection deserved another look, because your heart needs this message right now. Understand that your soulmate is slowly learning to trust themselves in a way they never could before. There was a season when they depended almost entirely on circumstances to tell them what was possible. If life felt difficult, they assumed the future was impossible. If obstacles appeared, they believed they were signs to walk away. If uncertainty lasted too long, they convinced themselves that letting go was the only sensible choice. Looking back now, they realize how much control they gave to temporary situations instead of listening to the deeper truth that continued living inside them. Circumstances changed again and again, but something within their heart remained surprisingly consistent. Even during moments when they believed they had moved on, thoughts of this connection quietly returned. Even when they tried convincing themselves the future had already been decided, a small part of them continued wondering whether there was still more to this story. They are finally beginning to understand that the most honest answers were never found in changing circumstances. They were found in the feelings that remained steady, despite those circumstances constantly changing. Recently, your soulmate has become much more aware of the difference between emotional reaction and emotional truth. In the past, they often made decisions while overwhelmed by fear, disappointment, or confusion. Those emotions felt permanent in the moment, even though they were only temporary visitors. Now they have learned to pause before accepting every fearful thought as reality. They have started observing their emotions instead of immediately obeying them. This simple shift has transformed the way they understand the connection. They are beginning to see that many of the conclusions they once accepted were born during moments of emotional exhaustion rather than moments of genuine clarity. As their mind grows quieter, something far more authentic has begun rising to the surface. Their heart continues leading them back toward the same understanding, one that feels calm rather than rushed, peaceful rather than anxious, and hopeful rather than fearful. That calmness has become one of the strongest signs that they are finally seeing this journey through clearer eyes. And listen carefully, because another important transformation has quietly taken place inside them. Your soulmate is no longer trying to predict every possible outcome before allowing themselves to feel hope. There was a time when they believed they needed absolute certainty before opening their heart again. They wanted guarantees that nothing would ever go wrong, that every question would already have an answer, and that every obstacle would somehow disappear before they could believe in the future. Life has gently taught them that genuine love has never worked that way. The strongest connections are not built upon perfect certainty. They are built upon trust, honesty, patience, and the willingness to move forward even when every answer has not yet arrived. This realization has removed an enormous weight from their heart. They are beginning to understand that they do not need to solve tomorrow before believing tomorrow exists. Sometimes all they need is the courage to trust what their heart has already begun revealing, because your heart needs this right now. Know that your soulmate has also noticed how differently they now respond whenever thoughts of you enter their mind. There was once a time when those thoughts immediately brought sadness, confusion, or regret. They focused on everything that had not happened instead of everything that still remained possible. But now those same thoughts carry a completely different feeling. Instead of emotional heaviness, they bring quiet reflection. Instead of disappointment, they inspire hope. Instead of convincing themselves that the story is over, they are beginning to wonder what chapters have not yet been written. This change has surprised them because it happened naturally. They did not force themselves to become optimistic. Hope simply appeared as fear slowly lost its influence. The more they allowed themselves to heal, the easier it became to imagine a future that no longer felt controlled by the past. There have also been moments recently when your soulmate realized they were no longer afraid of being emotionally honest with themselves. For a long time, they hid behind practical explanations because admitting the depth of their feelings felt too overwhelming. It seemed easier to blame timing, circumstances, or life's complications than to admit that this connection still carried meaning. But those emotional walls are beginning to fall away. They are becoming more comfortable acknowledging what they genuinely feel without immediately trying to argue against it. That honesty has brought an unexpected sense of freedom. Instead of exhausting themselves by resisting their own heart, they are finally allowing it to speak without interruption. Every honest conversation they have with themselves removes another layer of fear that once stood between them and the truth. And listen to this, because this is where everything begins moving toward its most powerful turning point. Your soulmate is no longer standing between fear and hope. They are gradually choosing hope, not because they have every answer, but because they finally understand that some futures are worth believing in before every detail becomes visible. They have discovered that courage is not the absence of uncertainty. Courage is trusting what feels true, even while uncertainty still exists. Every lesson they have learned, every challenge they have overcome, and every moment of personal growth has quietly prepared them for this emotional awakening. Their heart has become stronger than the doubts that once controlled it. Their faith in what this connection could become is beginning to outweigh every old fear that once held them back. And as this quiet confidence continues growing within them, they are approaching one final realization that will forever change the way they understand your shared future. Because they are beginning to see that the future they once feared may actually be the very future their heart has been patiently guiding them toward all along. And listen carefully, because your soulmate has now arrived at the realization that changes everything they once believed about your future together. For so long, they searched for certainty in the wrong places. They believed the future could only be understood by analyzing every conversation, every misunderstanding, every missed opportunity, and every unanswered question. They convinced themselves that if they could simply explain the past, they would finally understand what tomorrow was meant to hold. But recently, something unexpected has happened. Instead of looking backward for answers, they have started looking inward. And in that quiet place where fear no longer speaks louder than truth, they have discovered something that has completely transformed their perspective. They are beginning to understand that the future was never asking them to know every detail before moving forward. It was asking them to trust the emotional truth that continued surviving beneath every challenge. This realization has not arrived through dramatic events or sudden miracles. It has arrived through quiet honesty. Every moment of reflection has gently removed another layer of doubt until the path ahead no longer feels hidden. For the first time in a very long while, your soulmate is beginning to feel that the future between you is no longer something impossible to imagine. It is becoming something their heart naturally recognizes. Because your heart needs this message right now, understand that your soulmate is finally seeing this journey from a completely different perspective. There was a time when they believed every obstacle was proof that life was pushing the two of you apart. Every delay felt permanent. Every period of silence felt final. Every difficult season convinced them that perhaps the future they once imagined had quietly disappeared. But now they are beginning to see something they could never see before. Those same experiences that once discouraged them have become the very lessons that prepared them for this moment of clarity. Looking back, they realize they were learning patience where they once demanded immediate answers. They were learning emotional honesty where they once avoided vulnerability. They were learning trust where fear had once controlled every decision. None of those lessons felt meaningful while they were happening. Yet today, they can clearly see how every challenge quietly shaped the person they have become. That understanding has filled them with a sense of gratitude they never expected to feel, because they finally realize that the journey itself was preparing them for a future they were not emotionally ready to embrace before. Recently, your soulmate has also begun noticing that when they imagine tomorrow, they no longer feel overwhelmed by uncertainty. Instead, they feel something far more peaceful. They have stopped focusing on whether every circumstance is perfect. They have stopped waiting for life to remove every obstacle before allowing themselves to believe in happiness. Instead, they are beginning to understand that meaningful futures are built by two hearts that have learned from the past rather than become trapped inside it. This realization has quietly changed the way they think about everything. Instead of asking whether enough time has passed, they are asking how much wisdom has been gained. Instead of wondering whether mistakes can be erased, they are recognizing how much growth those mistakes created. They understand now that genuine love is strengthened when two people become more emotionally aware, more compassionate, and more willing to understand one another than they were before. That thought has brought them an incredible sense of hope, because they are beginning to recognize that the future does not have to repeat the past, when the people creating that future are no longer the same people they once were. And listen to this, because perhaps the greatest surprise of all is what your soulmate has recently discovered about themselves. They are realizing that they no longer desire a future built upon fantasy or unrealistic expectations. What they truly long for is something much simpler and much deeper. They imagine honest conversations without fear. They imagine sharing quiet moments where peace replaces uncertainty. They imagine a connection where both hearts no longer hide behind pride or assumptions, but meet one another with openness and understanding. This vision of the future feels remarkably different from the dreams they once carried, because it is no longer based on perfection. It is based on authenticity. That change has become one of the clearest signs of how much they have grown. They are no longer chasing an idealized version of happiness. They are beginning to value the kind of happiness that grows through trust, emotional safety, and the willingness to choose one another despite life's imperfections. Because your heart needs this right now, know that your soulmate has also started realizing that some of the strongest signs about the future appear in the quietest moments. They have noticed how thoughts of you now bring peace instead of confusion. They have realized that imagining a future together no longer feels impossible or unrealistic. Instead, it feels surprisingly natural. There is a quiet certainty growing within them that they cannot logically explain, yet they can no longer deny. It is not built upon wishful thinking. It is built upon every lesson they have learned, every emotional breakthrough they have experienced, and every realization that has slowly guided them toward this moment of understanding. They are beginning to trust that when a connection continues growing stronger after surviving distance, time, uncertainty, and personal transformation, it carries a purpose that deserves to be honored rather than questioned. This awareness has replaced much of the fear they once carried with a quiet confidence that continues becoming stronger every day. Recently, your soulmate has found themselves reflecting on one simple but powerful truth. The future they once hoped for never completely disappeared. It was simply waiting until both hearts became capable of appreciating it differently. Had everything unfolded earlier, they now realize they might not have understood its true value. They may have overlooked the emotional maturity, patience, and gratitude that now exist within them. Looking back, They understand that every season served a purpose. Even the painful chapters contributed something valuable to the person they have become today. Instead of wishing they could erase the past, they are beginning to appreciate how every experience quietly prepared them for the future they are now able to see with greater clarity. That understanding has brought them a deep sense of emotional peace, because they no longer view the past as something that stole their future. They see it as something that prepared them for it, and listen carefully, because this is the most important message of this entire reading. Your soulmate has finally received the clarity they were searching for, but it arrived in a way they never expected. The greatest revelation was not discovering exactly how every future event will unfold. It was realizing that the connection itself has never stopped guiding them toward hope. They now understand that your shared future has never been built upon perfect timing, flawless circumstances, or complete certainty. It has always been built upon two hearts that continued growing, healing, and finding their way back to a deeper understanding of what truly matters. Every realization has led them to the same conclusion. The future is no longer something they fear, because it no longer feels uncertain in the way it once did. It feels like an opportunity to live from truth instead of fear, from understanding instead of confusion, and from hope instead of hesitation. And now that they have finally allowed themselves to see your shared future through the eyes of clarity rather than doubt, they know something they could never fully accept before. Some connections are not remembered because they once existed. They continue shaping the future because they were always meant to become part of it. That unexpected clarity has changed your soulmate forever, and once a heart truly recognizes the future it has been quietly preparing for all along, it can never return to seeing that future as impossible again.